Today, we're going to be taking a look at Prince William's chart, and we're going to be taking a look at some of his largest life obstacles or heaviest karmas that's affecting him during his life. So it should be pretty interesting. And I think that you may discover a few new things maybe you haven't seen before. For those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can receive all the updates to my videos. By the way, I do practice Vedic sidereal astrology, which comes from ancient India. It's not Western tropical astrology. So if you're trying to determine your sign may be different using this method. My goal is 10,000 subscribers. Thank you for all of you that have been subscribing and also purchasing readings. That really does support what I do. Also, if you're interested in a private reading, check for details down below. I'm actually offering the biggest discount for the holidays that I've ever offered. So this is a really good opportunity for you, especially those of you that maybe have been wanting to go get a reading. Well, this is extremely affordable. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Prince William's chart. I'm going to pull that up for all of you. And we're going to talk about where Saturn is in Prince William's chart. And I'm going to show you how the aspects work in Vedic astrology. It's a little different in Vedic astrology than Western astrology. By the way, before we do this, quick disclaimer, this is for entertainment purposes only. And, all these statements about Prince William, they're all allegedly and speculation using astrology. Okay. So in Vedic astrology, when we talk about aspects, a planet aspects a whole entire house. So in Western astrology, it might be more to the exact degree that a planet aspects as well. Also, with things like Saturn aspects, which we're going to talk about right now, there's a specific houses that Saturn aspects in Vedic astrology. So here's Saturn in Prince William's chart. And I like doing the little rings of Saturn. And so let's number the houses. So what you want to do is you're going to make this house, even though it's the 10th house, you're going to make this house like the first house. And then what you're going to do is you're going to number these houses. Okay. We're going to number these all the way till 10. We don't need to go all the way till 12. So the first aspect of Saturn goes to the third house, 3 houses from itself, which ends up being the 12th house. The next aspect of Saturn goes to the 7th house from itself. And then the third aspect of Saturn goes to the 10th. It's called the 10th aspect, which is on the 7th house. So these are the aspects. The most powerful aspects are going to be the third aspect and the 10th aspect. This one is still, the 7th aspect is still significant. So it's not to be downplayed. It's still a significant life lesson, but not as much as the 3rd and the 10th. Those are the most powerful strength. In Vedic astrology, the aspect is actually called in Sanskrit drishti. And drishti means the planet is glancing at that house. So metaphorically, it's glancing at the house, and that's what drishti means. Let me clean this up. We're going to go to a slideshow. So we're going to talk about, what does that mean? What does it mean for Saturn to be here in the sign of Virgo in the 10th house and next to Saturn? What does that mean? So that's what we're going to be talking about right now. Let me pull that up for you all. This should be really interesting. So first of all, Saturn is in the 10th house of Virgo. This is going to show that Prince William, a lot of his karma, with Virgo, it happens to be a karma that has to do with criticism and perfectionism. So for example, a lot of people that grow up with this placement, their parents either, they may have inadvertently, or maybe they were very overt about it. The child may have perceived them to be overly critical in some way. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that his parents were, but this is coming from Prince William's point of view. So he feels like he has to be perfect. He doesn't like criticism. And so this karma of criticism, which Saturn and Virgo represents, it shows that even now, even when he's older, criticism is going to still be an important, a heavy karma in his life. So, maybe he has a stoic face when, the media says negative things, or when people say negative things when he's out in crowds. I'm sure he doesn't get all positive comments, but some of these things can be hurtful. Even if he has a straight face, it could be extremely hurtful. So he doesn't like criticism. he might be a little bit critical himself because of it. People that have Saturn in Virgo, they're really good at like finding small details and imperfections of people. For example, people that have Saturn and Virgo usually could become like a journalist or an investigator because they're really good at finding details. So sometimes they'll use that criticism as a shield because they don't like criticism, so they kind of reflect it back to other people. Um, so that may be something that he struggles with, but definitely there's a feeling of perfectionism. He may want everything to be perfect when he does certain things. Um, and this could be difficult from a young age. I just want you to know from a young age, maybe there was a lot more pressure on him being the elder child with him and Prince Harry, maybe because he was essentially the heir to the throne. Maybe there was a lot of pressure. Now this idea of Saturn and Mars together, let's talk about that. That can represent suppressed anger from past lifetimes. Okay. So one of the things is when you have Saturn and Mars together like that, it might be just finding a way to appropriately express your anger is going to be one of those difficult karmas. And when I talk about expressing anger, it can be either hot or cold. Like maybe there's situations where you get too angry, and maybe there's situations where you don't speak your mind. So it can be one of these hot cold where you don't really know how to find a middle ground. Because when Mars and Saturn are together, it's like one foot's on the gas, one foot's on the brake. So it's like you really don't know how to find that middle way. And so that's something. Um, Now, this idea of Saturn being in the 10th house, he has a lot of public duty in the lifetime. Remember, wherever Saturn is in our chart, it's showing somewhere where we feel forced. So he feels forced to be in the public eye with Saturn being in the 10th house. And he has all this obligation that's been placed on him. It's part of his karma. The 10th house shows that this is his karma yoga. Okay. So it is his karma, but it might not come to be enjoyable to him because when Saturn is there, there's a feeling of obligation. There's a feeling of, I got to do this. Like maybe I don't want to get out of bed today, but I got to go do this thing. So that's what Saturn is. There's all this pressure to do this. So, in some ways, Prince William sometimes might want to go on a nice long vacation and not have to show up for anything, but he's very duty bound with Saturn being in the 10th house. Now let's talk about the 6 from Saturn. One thing I want to point out is Saturn in Prince William's chart is known as Atmakarika. And let me pull up the chart for you so you can see what that means in Vedic astrology. This is from a system called Gemini. But the idea is you take the planet with the highest degree in your chart. So except Rahu and Ketu. Okay. So that the highest degree would be Saturn at 21 degrees here. This becomes what's known as the Atmakarika for Prince William. And this is like the planet that represents your soul on a lot of levels. Okay. So you look at your chart, find the planet with the highest degree, and that's known as the Atmakarika. Now, if you look at 6 from Atmakarika, this can show a lot of the life challenges in this lifetime. And look at this. This is interesting. So 6 houses from Atmakarika is the 3rd house, which is all about siblings. So it's a couple of things. 3rd house is about siblings, and we could infer Harry there, Prince Harry. Also, 3rd house is media. So this idea of all this media attention is one of these great difficulties in the lifetime. And if you think about it, a lot of what happened with Princess Diana, his mother, a lot of people blame the media or what happened with the paparazzi. And so, there's this animosity. So that's what it shows. Remember, any 6 from angle is showing like where there's animosity there. There's some animosity. Now, it doesn't need to be extremely acute, but it's there in the background. Let's go ahead and take a look at the slideshow again. So 6th house from Atmakarika is going to show a lot of difficulty there. So heavy past life karma with Prince Harry, and then heavy past life karma with the media, and this could mean the paparazzi. Okay, now let's talk about some of the aspects. Remember the 7th aspect, or sorry, the 3rd aspect, because we were just talking about where Saturn is. The 3rd aspect of Saturn is on the 12th house of Scorpio. This shows that Prince William's going to have a difficult time just finding time alone, finding solace, finding peace. That's all going to be difficult. It can kind of make it difficult to have a spiritual life. So when you think of somebody that needs to develop spiritually, it takes time to develop spiritually. For example, you have to find time to meditate. You have to find time to study. You have to have time for prayers and all those kind of spiritual activities. Well, when Saturn is aspecting the 12th house, it can show that there's so much public obligation and public duties. It's taking away from that. So it's almost like a past life, because of all this public responsibility. It's taking away from this private and spiritual guidance that could be, helping him advance in other ways. So there's difficulty finding that privacy. So also it can be difficult resting. So 12th house represents sleep. So for example, he might find it difficult to go to sleep. He may suffer from things like insomnia. There's a possibility there. Or he may have these situations where it's difficult to go to sleep, or maybe it's difficult to wake up. So it disturbs the sleep in some sort of way. Now let's talk about the 7th aspect, which is on the 4th house. The 4th house, remember, it does represent our mother along with the moon, but it also represents family matters. So anything domestic, just being in the house. Okay. So 10th house would be, you go out to work. 4th house would be you come home and you see the family. And that's all what the 4th house is. So he may feel burdened with family matters at times. 4th house is domestic concerns. It doesn't mean he doesn't love his family. It just means that it might feel burdensome. Like if he has got a really busy schedule that day, and then he's got to try to put time in for the family, it might be seen as somewhat difficult there. Also, that the aspect to the 4th house can represent our early educational upbringing. So our really early schooling. So if you think of like elementary school, middle school, and high school, that would be what the 4th house is. Okay. So this shows that he has a lot of strict teachers and strict mentors growing up. Maybe he had a lot of strict tutors that were giving him a lot of, maybe because he was in line to be heir to the throne. Maybe there was a lot of strictness and protocols and things that he's got to know, things that the public doesn't know. Okay. Maybe that he had to be well versed on. He has an obligation to be patriotic. 4th house represents. Also, the obvious karma there was the karma regarding his mother and mother figures. That's a really obvious one. So I wasn't going to dwell too much on that. But what I do want to talk about with the karma with him and his mother, Princess Diana, is that because of the Saturn aspect there on the 4th house, and we'll also see that there's another aspect on the moon. This shows that loss of the mother is affecting for the lifetime. Okay. So for example, with that heavy aspect there on both the 4th house and the moon, it can show that, it might've been that Princess Diana, had that unfortunate accident, but that it was at a time where Prince William really needed her at that time, so it affected some of the emotional development there. Okay. And that can be felt for the entire lifespan. So it's a really difficult karma. All right, let's go to the next aspect here. The 10th aspect of Saturn is going to be on the 7th house of Gemini. And also remember in that chart, you saw, and let me pull that up again for you. The 10th aspect is on the 7th house. So that 7th house of marriage is indicated there. But also we have Rahu, Moon, and Sun there. So there's a stellium is what they call that when there's 3 or more planets in one house. The 7th house, it has several meanings. So first of all, the 7th house shows that the 7th house can be a career house, but it's mostly known as the marriage house. So let's talk about that for a moment. I'm going to bring up the slideshow again so we can really discuss that. So first of all, the aspect on the sun, it can show some karma with the father figures, but remember there wasn't an aspect on the 9th house. So we have to keep that in consideration. The karma maybe not be that strong with any negative karma with the father, but it could show that maybe your father has a lot of expectations. Okay. So King Charles, maybe there's a lot of expectations there. It doesn't mean that he doesn't love his father. It doesn't mean they have a bad relationship by any means. Like I said, if we saw a Saturn aspect on the 9th house and the sun, we would see, okay, there's some difficulties there, but it's not that. It's just an aspect on the sun there. Also, it can show that with an aspect on the sun on a really deep level, sometimes there can be this idea of the sun represents the soul, it represents the ego, it represents the self. So sometimes there can be a struggle within the lifetime to really form this idea of what you represent, who you are. So there could be a crisis of identity in the lifetime. Like, what do I represent? That might be a really big question with Saturn aspecting the sun. The aspect on the moon, again, like I said, this is a really strong aspect on mother figures. So, I mean, thinking about, again, Princess Diana. He's got very strong karma with the parents. Not everybody has this. Some people have, not a ton of heavy karma with parents. Some people in their charts have a lot of karma, but it does show that he does, that parents have had a profound impact on his life. Okay. They've really shaped who he is. So, he's really had strong impact by King Charles and then Princess Diana. They really did shape his life in a way that they left a lasting impression. Also, that Saturn karma shows that idea of loyalty and commitment. Okay. Now let's talk about what the seventh house mostly represents when people think of it. They think of marriage karma. So there's a lot to be learned through his marriage relationships. Okay. Or marriage relationship. I should just say singular there. The marriage relationship, this is going to be where he works out a lot of his unresolved issues, but this is where a lot of us work out a lot of our karmas through our marriage partners. Okay. So in Vedic astrology, especially your first marriage partner is usually somebody that's reflecting after the grace period and the honeymoon period, tend to damper down. Your marriage partner typically will show you some of the more difficult aspects, usually with the most difficult parent that you had growing up. So they're going to reflect to you some of those emotional dynamics that need to be healed. So a lot of times that's what's happening. So whatever difficulty was in that with that Saturn aspect to the fourth house is kind of coming out through the marriage where he's learning to work on those various aspects. Now, the good thing about Saturn aspecting the seventh house is that it does provide a lot of longevity. Like, these are marriages that could last a whole lifetime. Okay. You're very committed to the marriage. The downside about it is when Saturn's aspecting the marriage house with a very strong aspect, like the 10th aspect, like it is in Prince William's chart, it can show that marriage can start to become very duty bound. So for example, there might be less time for romance. There might be less time for more of the aspects of marriage that are just more fun, like just being able to go to the movies with your partner, or go do like fun things because there's so much public duty. Or maybe Prince William's got to go somewhere sometimes, and then his spouse has got to go off. Catherine, Prince of Wales, she's got to go off somewhere. So there's not a lot of time, or someone's got to be with the children. So a lot of times that can be the difficult karma. There's these long separations because of duty. And so then the marriage can feel very duty bound. Now, on a more personal level, when Saturn's aspecting the marriage house, it can show that there might be some fundamental disagreements within the relationship. Doesn't mean the relationship's bad. But what it can show is there might be certain issues that we're not privy to. It can be anything. It could be a belief about something, a belief about politics, a belief about whatever, where the Saturn is kind of like, to keep the peace, you have to kind of agree to disagree. So I don't know if any of you had a relationship where you both don't see eye to eye on something, some issue. It doesn't mean they don't see eye to eye on everything. There might be a few issues, and they're just like, you know what, we got to just, I agree to disagree with you. I have this opinion, you have this opinion. So a lot of times that's how you compromise with that kind of Saturn placement, because what Saturn does is Saturn is showing the obligation to stay in the marriage is very powerful. Like, they're not going to leave. So they have to figure out a way to, okay, if we disagree, okay, how do we still keep peace? Because we can't, in that type of chart, we can't leave the marriage if there's a disagreement. So we need to keep the peace. So agree to disagree. But let me put this on a positive aspect, because I know some of you might not be pleased to hear some of that. But with the moon in the seventh house, I do want you to know that's really good. The moon in the seventh house can show a very nurturing type of relationship. So something where you could find a lot of solace, because the moon shows where we're most comfortable. It shows where we feel like we're taken care of. And so a lot of times the moon represents where we're the most content. So there's that, like everything in life, things are complicated. You know, there's dual aspects to things. Things can have their more difficult side and easier side. So let me know what you think down below about this. These are some of Prince William's more difficult aspects according to the Vedic astrology chart. And of course, you know, this is just one way of looking at the astrological energies. It's a form of divination. You know, we don't know every struggle that Prince William has, but this is kind of like a general framework that we can look on. And you can look on this within your own chart as well to see maybe some of the larger life issues you have working on. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.